I'm Arthur Jensen and I'm 36 years old. I've lived in Cedar Springs, Michigan my whole life, mostly because it's home and I like the quiet pace of things. My job as an evening shift technician at the local hospital keeps me busy, usually from 3 in the afternoon until 11 at night. It's honest work helping people and I take pride in it. My truck, a beat up but reliable Ford Ranger, is more than just a vehicle, it's my lifeline, my independence. It gets me to work, to the grocery store, and occasionally out to the lake for some peace and quiet. I'm a pretty straightforward guy, not one for drama, just trying to make my way one shift at a time. I guess you could say my world was fairly simple routine, and I liked it that way. Then one particularly bad December night, the whole routine got thrown upside down. A brutal snow and ice storm blew in, the kind that makes the whole state shut down. Just as my shift was ending, I was down in the emergency room, watching the snow pile up outside, and asked a couple of the police officers who were there for a crash report if the roads were looking bad. They both nodded, rubbing their gloved hands together. "Yeah, Jensen, they're getting real nasty," one of them, Officer Miller, said. "Only road that's being plowed or treated is the highway. Stick to that, you should be all right." I thanked them, grabbed my bag, and headed out into the bitter cold, hoping to get home before it got any worse. 30 minutes later, I was carefully easing my Ford Ranger up the on-ramp to the highway, following the advice I'd just been given. I went maybe 50 feet, holding my breath, when my tires hit a patch of black ice I couldn't see. The truck spun out from under me, a sickening lurch, and then slammed hard into the guardrail. Everything went silent for a second, just the sound of the wind howling around the shattered driver's side mirror. I was facing north in the southbound emergency lane, my truck crumpled against the rail and it wouldn't start. I tried the ignition again and again, but nothing, just a sad, pathetic click. I sat there for a bit, shivering, figuring an officer would come along eventually, especially since they'd said the highway was the only treated road. Two separate patrol cars drove by me, their lights flashing in the distance, but neither of them stopped. They just kept going. The temperature outside was dropping fast, probably 20 degrees or colder, and the thought of freezing to death in my truck stuck against a guardrail was not a good one. I knew I couldn't stay there. So with my teeth chattering and my hands already numb, I got out, slammed the door shut, and began to carefully pick my way down a steep, icy three-story embankment to the city street below. It was treacherous, my feet slipping on loose ice and snow, but I made it. I started walking back towards the hospital, my breath pluming white in the freezing air, my boots crunching on the untouched snow. I hadn't gotten far when one of our hospital security guards, Dave, saw me and pulled over, asking if I needed a ride. Grateful, I hopped in. Once I was back inside the warm hospital, I used a landline to call the non-emergency number, since this was before pretty much everyone had a cell phone. I reported my wreck, giving them all the details. The dispatcher, a woman with a surprisingly calm voice considering the chaos outside, told me I should have stayed in my vehicle. I explained, my voice tight with frustration and cold. "It's 20 degrees, my truck won't start, and I would have frozen to death out there." She just said, "Okay, sir, we'll call you when we dispatch an officer." I hung up, feeling a flicker of hope, but also a growing sense of unease. My friend Dave offered to take me home, and I accepted, figuring I'd get the call soon enough, but no call ever came. The next morning, I called a buddy of mine who owned a local wrecker service, asking him to go pick up my truck. A little while later, he called me back, his voice confused. "Arthur, your truck isn't there, man, it's gone." My stomach dropped. I immediately called the non-emergency number again. This time, a different dispatcher informed me in a chillingly detached tone that a state trooper had had my truck towed as a hit and run. Furthermore, there was an active warrant out for my arrest for leaving the scene of an accident. I felt a wave of disbelief, then pure anger. "But I called it in," I nearly shouted into the phone. "I reported it last night. Can't you see my call?" She sighed, a sound of weary indifference. "Sir, we had 220 accidents reported last night. Your call must have gotten lost in the shuffle." Lost in the shuffle? My life, my truck, my freedom, all lost in the shuffle. I asked her how I could get my truck released, desperate for a solution. She told me I had to contact the specific trooper who handled it and complete an accident report with him. Finally, some concrete information. She gave me his name, Master Trooper Peterson, and his contact information, which was just his precinct's main number. I hung up, my hand shaking slightly, and immediately called the number. They told me Master Trooper Peterson was off duty for the next couple of days, but they would leave a message for him. Great, just great. Here I was, a single guy who relied on his only vehicle to get to work every evening, suddenly without transportation and with a warrant hanging over my head. Thankfully, I had a couple of days off, but that wouldn't last forever. I kept calling the precinct, leaving messages, explaining my situation, pleading with them to understand. The impound fees were ticking up with every passing day, a constant source of stress. By the third day of calling, with no response from Trooper Peterson, I was at my breaking point. I asked to speak to his supervisor. The supervisor, Sergeant Reynolds, came on the line, sounding just as tired as the dispatcher. He listened to my story, then simply stated that Master Trooper Peterson was on vacation and that only he, Master Trooper Peterson, could take the accident report and clear the warrant. Not even the supervisor could do it. I knew deep down that was pure bull crap, a flimsy excuse, but I was at their mercy, completely powerless. My livelihood, my reputation, my peace of mind, all held hostage by one man's vacation schedule and a bureaucratic error. It felt like the entire system had decided to punish me for something that wasn't my fault, and there was nothing I could do. I felt utterly defeated, watching the snow outside my window, wondering how I was going to get back to work. Fortunately, my uncle, who always seems to have a spare vehicle or two lying around, heard about my predicament and graciously loaned me one of his old sedans. It wasn't my truck, but it was wheels, and it meant I could at least get to work. The relief was immense, but it didn't erase the deep frustration and injustice I felt. The warrant was still active, my truck was still impounded, and Master Trooper Peterson was still nowhere to be found. A whole week went by, a week of me driving my uncle's car, calling the precinct, and getting nowhere. Each day the impound fees grew higher, a constant nagging reminder of the unfairness of it all. I felt like a criminal for reporting my own accident, like I was being punished for trying to be responsible. The thought of getting pulled over with that warrant active, even if it was a mistake, made my heart pound. I started to wonder if I'd ever get my truck back or if I'd have to go through some long, complicated legal process just to clear my name. It was a suffocating feeling, that sense of being completely trapped and unheard. I kept thinking about the look on the dispatcher's face or the officers if I just casually mentioned I was a victim of a hit and run. No, that would not work. This whole ordeal had been a heavy weight on my shoulders, making it hard to focus, making me feel constantly on edge. I felt like I was at the absolute bottom, with no clear way out. Then finally, after what felt like an eternity, I received a call from Master Trooper Peterson himself. His voice was gruff, devoid of apology, simply stating that he was back from vacation and could come to my house to take the report. A surge of relief mixed with simmering anger washed over me. "Great," I said, trying to keep my voice even. "Let's get this done." He said he'd be there in about 20 minutes. I was home alone that day, my day off before a string of 4 shifts at the hospital, and I had spent the morning cleaning. My small house was neat and tidy, a far cry from what some might expect from a single guy living alone. I suppose I wanted to present myself as responsible in order to make it clear I was not some reckless hit-and-run driver. When he arrived, Master Trooper Peterson stepped into my living room, and I could tell by the slight widening of his eyes that he was surprised by how clean and orderly everything was. His gaze lingered on my polished kitchen table, then around the living room, almost as if he'd expected to find a messy bachelor pad. "You can sit at the kitchen table," I offered, gesturing towards it. "We can get this report written there." He nodded, then did something that at the time I barely registered but would soon become the key to my small act of rebellion. He took off his state trooper's hat and placed it on the chair next to him at the kitchen table. We went through the whole accident report, me explaining the black ice, the guardrail, the freezing cold, and why I had to leave my truck. He scribbled notes, his expression unreadable. When I finished, he looked up finally with something that might have been a flicker of acknowledgement in his eyes. "I see your call now," he said, his voice flat. "The one you made the night of the accident." He paused. "And my supervisor could have taken this report, you're right, but it's all done now." My jaw tightened, so I had been right all along. They could have resolved this days ago, saved me all that stress, the mounting impound fees, the worry about a warrant. He knew it, and he just brushed it off. The report completed, Master Trooper Peterson stood up, gathered his papers, and walked out the door. I watched him drive away, my anger still simmering, a bitter taste in my mouth. I walked back into the kitchen, sighing, ready to put this whole nightmare behind me, and that's when I saw it. There, sitting innocently on the chair at my kitchen table, was Master Trooper Peterson's hat. He had forgotten it. A small black state trooper's hat, a symbol of the authority that had caused me so much grief. A slow smile spread across my face. Oh, the possibilities. I thought about just calling the precinct and telling them he left it, but that felt too simple, too easy for him. No, after a week of being treated like a criminal, of having my calls ignored and my concerns dismissed, I wanted something more. I wanted a little bit of sweet, sweet payback. So I picked up my landline, dialed the non-emergency number again, the very same number that had repeatedly failed me. When the dispatcher answered, I took a deep breath, and in my smoothest, most knowing tone, a voice that hinted at something deliciously improper without actually saying it, I began. "Yes, hello," I purred into the phone. "This is Arthur Jensen. Master Trooper Peterson was just here at my house." I paused, letting the words hang in the air, allowing a suggestive lilt to enter my voice. "And we were, he was taking a report, and well, he accidentally left a part of his uniform here when he left." I let out a soft, almost imperceptible chuckle. The dispatcher on the other end was silent for a moment, then I heard a small cough. I didn't have to imagine the scene unfolding at the precinct, the call going out over the radio, the sudden whispers, the knowing glances. It was glorious. I stood by my window waiting. It wasn't long, maybe 10 minutes, before Master Trooper Peterson's patrol car pulled back into my driveway. He didn't look so confident and unbothered anymore. He got out of his car, his face a shade of crimson I hadn't thought possible, a deep angry red. He walked briskly to my front door, knocked once, and when I opened it, he just stared at me, his eyes blazing, a silent fury radiating off him. I just smiled, a small, polite smile, and silently handed him his hat. He snatched it, jammed it onto his head, and turned on his heel without a single word, marching back to his car. I wanted to laugh out loud, to shout with triumph, but I held it in, savoring the moment. The revenge was so incredibly sweet, a small but significant victory against the man who had caused me so much unnecessary trouble. In the end, I did get my truck back. The impound fees were steep, a painful reminder of the whole ordeal, but I paid them. I took the truck to my mechanic, got the guardrail damage repaired, and soon enough, my old Ford Ranger was back on the road, good as new. Life in Cedar Springs slowly returned to normal, my evening shifts at the hospital a familiar routine once more. But I was different. That whole experience had taught me a valuable lesson. Even when you're facing a powerful, indifferent system, even when you feel completely helpless, there's always a way to fight back, to reclaim a little piece of your dignity. You just have to be clever. A few weeks later, I heard through the grapevine at the hospital, from one of the security guards who was a friend of a dispatcher, that Master Trooper Peterson had been transferred to a different precinct way out in the thumb of Michigan. Apparently, there had been some internal review regarding unprofessional conduct. I never got a direct confirmation, but I figured my little phone call hinting at something scandalous had made enough waves to cause a ripple effect. It was a subtle, unexpected twist, a quiet confirmation that my small act of rebellion had indeed landed. And every now and then, when I drove past a state trooper, I'd give a little nod, a knowing smile, remembering the day I turned the tables on Master Trooper Peterson. It was a good feeling, a quiet satisfaction that settled deep in my bones.